Hare Krishna.
Hello, Hare Krishna. So we're out in the park because it was a bit sunny, but
we're in the middle of Storm Ellen.
Right before we went live, a little bit of,
we're in the middle of a hurricane.
Gale force winds started.
Now it might rain in a minute. So.
Yeah, so we're gonna start now anyway, and see how we go.
Alright.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
It's Canto 1, Chapter 16, Text 12. The chapter's called How Parikshit Received the Age of Kali. So, Text 12. Maharaj Parikshit then conquered all parts of the earthly planet, Vadrasva, Ketumala, Bharat, the northern Kuru, Kim Purusha, etc., and exacted tributes from their respective rulers. Purport. Vadrasva is a tract of land near Meru Parvata, and it extends from Gandhamadana Parvata to the saltwater ocean. There is a description of this Varsha in the Mahabharata. The description was narrated by Sanjaya to Dhritarashtra.
Maharaj Yudhisthira also conquered this Varsha, and thus the province was included within the jurisdiction of his empire. Maharaj Parikshit was formally declared to be the emperor of all lands ruled by his grandfather, but still he had to establish his supremacy while he was out of his capital to exact tribute from such states.
Ketumala is this earth planet is divided into 7 dweepas by 7 oceans, and the central dweepa called Jambudvip is divided into 9 varshas or parts by 8 huge mountains. Bharatvarsha is one of the above-mentioned 9 varshas, and Ketumala is also described as one of the above varshas. It is said that in Ketumala Varsha, women are the most beautiful. This Varsha was conquered by Arjuna also. A description of this part of the world is available in the Mahabharata.
It is said that this part of the world is situated on the western side of the Meru Parvat, and inhabitants of this province used to live up to 10,000 years. Human beings living in this part of the globe are of golden color, and the women resemble the angels of heaven. The inhabitants are free from all kinds of disease and grief.
Bharatvarsha. This part of the world is also one of the 9 Varshas of the Jambudvip. A description of Bharatvarsha is given in the Mahabharata.
In the center of Jambudvip is Ilavrita Varsha, and south of Ilavrita Varsha is Hari Varsha. The description of these Varshas is given in the Mahabharata as follows. It is mentioned here that the women in both these Varshas are beautiful, and some of them are equal to the Apsaras or heavenly women.
Uttara Kuru. According to Vedic geography, the northernmost portion of Jambudvip is called Uttara Kuru Varsha. It is surrounded by the saltwater ocean from 3 sides and divided by Shringavan mountain from the Hiranmaya Varsha. Kim Purusha Varsha. It is stated to be situated north of the Great Himalaya mountain, which is 80,000 miles in length and height, and which covers 16,000 miles in width. These parts of the world were also conquered by Arjuna. The Kim Purushas are descendants of the daughter of Daksha. When Maharaj Yudhisthira performed the horse sacrifice yajna, the inhabitants of these countries were also present to take part in the festival, and they paid tributes to the emperor. This part of the world is called Kim Purusha Varsha, or sometimes the Himalayan provinces, Himavati. It is said that Sukadeva Goswami was born in these Himalayan provinces, and that he came to Bharatvarsha after crossing the Himalayan mountains. In other words, Maharaj Parikshit conquered all the world. He conquered all the continents adjoining all the seas and oceans in all directions, namely the eastern, western, northern and southern parts of the world.
Right. Text 13 through 15. Wherever the king visited, he continuously heard the glories of his great forefathers, who were all devotees of the Lord, and also of the glorious acts of Lord Krishna. He also heard how he himself had been protected by the Lord from the powerful heat of the weapon of Ashwatthama. People also mentioned the great affection between the descendants of Vrishni and Pritha, due to the latter's great devotion to Lord Keshav. The king, being very pleased with the singers of such glories, opened his eyes in great satisfaction. Out of magnanimity, he was pleased to award them valuable necklaces and clothing. Purport. Kings and great personalities of the state are presented with welcome addresses. This is a system from time immemorial, and Maharaj Parikshit, since he was one of the well-known emperors of the world, was also presented with addresses of welcome in all parts of the world as he visited those places. The subject matter of those welcome addresses was Krishna. Krishna means Krishna and his eternal devotees, as the king means the king and his confidential associates.
Krishna and his unalloyed devotees cannot be separated, and therefore glorifying the devotee means glorifying the Lord and vice versa. Maharaj Parikshit would not have been glad to hear about the glories of his forefathers like Maharaj Yudhishthira and Arjuna had they not been connected with the acts of Lord Krishna. The Lord descends specifically to deliver his devotees, Paritra Naya Sadhunam. The devotees are glorified by the presence of the Lord, because they cannot live for a moment without the presence of the Lord and his different energies. The Lord is present for the devotee by his acts and glories, and therefore Maharaj Parikshit felt the presence of the Lord when he was glorified by his acts, especially when he was saved by the Lord in the womb of his mother. The devotees of the Lord are never in danger, but in the material world, which is full of dangers at every step, the devotees are apparently placed into dangerous positions, and when they are saved by the Lord is glorified. Lord Krishna would not have been glorified as the speaker of the Bhagavad Gita had his devotees like the Pandavas not been entangled in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. All such acts of the Lord were mentioned in the addresses of welcome, and Maharaj Parikshit, in full satisfaction, rewarded those who presented such addresses. The difference between the presentation of welcome addresses today and in those days is that formerly the welcome addresses were presented to a person like Maharaj Parikshit. The welcome addresses are full of facts and figures, and those who presented such addresses were sufficiently rewarded. Whereas in the present days, the welcome addresses are presented not always with factual statements, but to please the post holder, and often they are full of flattering lies. And rarely are those who present such welcome addresses rewarded by the poor receiver.
Interesting statement. So now text 16. Maharaj Parikshit heard that out of his causeless mercy, Lord Krishna, Vishnu, who is universally obeyed, rendered all kinds of service to the malleable sons of Pandu by accepting posts ranging from chariot driver to president to messenger, friend, night watchman, etc., according to the will of the Pandavas, obeying them like a servant and offering obeisances like one younger in years. When he heard this, Maharaj Parikshit became overwhelmed with devotion to the lotus feet of the Lord. Purport. Lord Krishna is everything to the unalloyed devotees like the Pandavas. The Lord was for them the Supreme Lord, the spiritual master, the worshipable deity, the guide, the chariot driver, the friend, the servant, the messenger, and everything they could conceive of. And thus the Lord also reciprocated the feelings of the Pandavas. Maharaj Parikshit, as a pure devotee of the Lord, could appreciate the Lord's transcendental reciprocation of the feelings of his devotees, and thus he himself also was overwhelmed with the dealings of the Lord. Simply by appreciating the dealings of the Lord with his pure devotees, one can attain salvation. The Lord's dealings with his devotees appear to be ordinary human dealings, but one who knows them in truth becomes at once eligible to go back home, back to Godhead. The Pandavas were so malleable to the will of the Lord that they could sacrifice any amount of energy for the service of the Lord. And by such unalloyed determination, they could secure the Lord's mercy in any shape they desired.
Text 17. Now you may hear from me of what happened while Maharaj Parikshit was passing his days hearing of the good occupations of his forefathers and being absorbed in thought of them. Text 18. The personality of religious principles, Dharma, was wandering about in the form of a bull. And he met the personality of earth in the form of a cow, who appeared to grieve like a mother who had lost her child. She had tears in her eyes, and the beauty of her body was lost. Thus, Dharma questioned the earth as follows. Purport. The bull is the emblem of the moral principle, and the cow is a representative of the earth. When the bull and the cow are in a joyful mood, it is to be understood that the people of the world are also in a joyful mood. The reason is that the bull helps production of grains in the agricultural field, and the cow delivers milk, the miracle of aggregate food values. The human society therefore maintains these two important animals very carefully so that they can wander everywhere in cheerfulness. But at the present moment in this age of Kali, both the bull and the cow are now being slaughtered and eaten up as foodstuff by a class of men who do not know the Brahminical culture. The bull and the cow can be protected for the good of all human society simply by the spreading of Brahminical culture as the topmost perfection of all cultural affairs. By advancement of such culture, the morale of society is properly maintained, and so peace and prosperity are also attained without strenuous effort. When Brahminical culture deteriorates, the cow and bull are mistreated, and the resultant actions are prominent by the following symptoms.
Dharma, in the form of a bull, asked, Madam, are you not hale and hearty? Why are you covered with the shadow of grief? It appears by your face that you have become black. Are you suffering from some internal disease, or are you thinking of some relative who is away in a distant place? Purport. The people of the world in this age of Kali are always full of anxieties. Everyone is diseased with some kind of ailment. From the very faces of the people of this age, one can find out the index of the mind. Everyone feels the absence of his relative who is away from home. The particular symptom of the age of Kali is that no family is now blessed to live together. To earn a livelihood, the father lives at a place far away from the son, or the wife lives far away from the husband, and so on. There are sufferings from internal diseases, separation from those near and dear, and anxieties for maintaining the status quo. These are but some important factors which make the people of this age always unhappy.
Text 20. I have lost my 3 legs, and am now standing on one only. Are you lamenting for my state of existence, or are you in great anxiety because henceforward the unlawful meat eaters will exploit you? Or are you in a sorry plight because the demigods are now bereft of their share of sacrificial offerings because no sacrifices are being performed at present? Or are you grieving for living beings because of their sufferings due to famine and drought? Purport. With the progress of the age of Kali, 4 things particularly, namely the duration of life, mercy, the power of recollection and morale, or religious principles, will gradually diminish. Since Dharma, or the principles of religion, would be lost in the proportion of 3 out of 4, the symbolic bull was standing on 1 leg only. When 3/4 of the population of the whole world become irreligious, the situation is converted into hell for the animals. In the age of Kali, godless civilizations will create so many so-called religious societies in which the personality of Godhead will be directly or indirectly defied. And thus, faithless societies of men will make the world uninhabitable for the sanest section of people. There are gradations of human beings in terms of proportionate faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The first class faithful men are the Vaishnavas and the Brahmanas, and then the Kshatriyas, and then the Vaishyas, then the Shudras, and the Mlecchas, the Yavanas, and at last the Chandalas. The degradation of the human instinct begins from the Mlecchas, and the Chandala state of life is the last word in human degradation. All the above terms mentioned in the Vedic literatures are never meant for any particular community or birth. There are different qualifications of human beings in general. There is no question of birthright or community. One can acquire the respective qualifications by one's own efforts, and thus the son of a Vaishnava can become a Mleccha, or the son of a Chandala can become more than a Brahmana, all in terms of their association and intimate relation with the Supreme Lord.
The meat-eaters are generally called Mlecchas, but all meat-eaters are not Mlecchas. Those who accept meat in terms of scriptural injunctions are not Mlecchas, but those who accept meat without restriction are called Mlecchas. Beef is forbidden in the scriptures, and the bulls and cows are offered special protection by followers of the Vedas. But in this age of Kali, people will exploit the body of the bull and the cow as they like, and thus they will invite sufferings of various types.
The people of this age will not perform any sacrifice. The Mleccha population will care very little for performances of sacrifices, although performances of sacrifice is essential for persons who are materially engaged in sense enjoyment. In the Bhagavad Gita, performance of sacrifices is strongly recommended. Reference Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, texts 14 to 16.
The living beings are created by the Creator Brahma, and just to maintain the created living being progressively towards the path back to Godhead, the system of performing sacrifice is also created by Him. The system is that living beings live on the produce of grains and vegetables, and by eating such foodstuff they get vital power of the body in the shape of blood and semen. And from blood and semen, one living being is able to create other living beings. But the production of grains, grass, etc. becomes possible by rain, and this rain is made to shower properly by performance of recommended sacrifices. Such sacrifices are directed by the rites of the Vedas, namely Sama, Yajur, Rig, and Atharva. In the Manusmrita, it is recommended that by offering of sacrifice on the altar of the fire, the sun god is pleased. When the sun god is pleased, he properly collects water from the seas, and thus sufficient clouds collect on the horizon and rains fall. After sufficient rains fall, there is sufficient production of grains for men and all animals, and thus there is energy in the living being for progressive activity. The Mlecchas, however, make plans to install slaughterhouses for killing bulls and cows along with other animals, thinking that they will prosper by increasing the number of factories and live on animal food without caring for the performance of sacrifices and production of grains. But they must know that even for the animals they must produce grass and vegetables, otherwise the animals cannot live. And to produce grass for the animals they require sufficient rains. Therefore they have to depend ultimately on the mercy of the demigods like the sun god, Indra, and Chandra. And such demigods must be satisfied by performance of sacrifice.
This material world is a sort of prison house, as we have several times mentioned. The demigods are the servants of the Lord, who see to the proper upkeep of the prison house. These demigods want to see that the rebel living beings who want to survive faithlessly are gradually turned towards the supreme power of the Lord. Therefore, the system of offering sacrifice is recommended in the scriptures.
The materialistic men want to work hard and enjoy fruit of results for sense enjoyment. Thus they are committing many types of sins at every step of life. Those, however, who are consciously engaged in the devotional service of the Lord are transcendental to all varieties of sin and virtue. Their activities are free from the contamination of the three modes of material nature. For the devotees, there is no need for performance of prescribed sacrifices because the very life of the devotee is a symbol of sacrifice. But persons who are engaged in fruitive activities for sense enjoyment must perform the prescribed sacrifices, because that is the only means to get free from the reaction of all sins committed by fruitive workers. Sacrifice is the means for counteracting such accumulated sins. The demigods are pleased when such sacrifices are performed, just as prison officers are satisfied when the prisoners are turned into obedient subjects. Lord Chaitanya, however, has recommended only one yajna or sacrifice, called the Sankirtan Yajna, the chanting of Hare Krishna, in which everyone can take part. Thus both devotees and fruitive workers can derive equal benefit from the performances of Sankirtan Yajna.
Text 21. Are you feeling compunction for the unhappy women and children who are left forlorn by unscrupulous persons? Or are you unhappy because the goddess of learning is being handled by brahmanas addicted to acts against the principles of religion? Or are you sorry to see that the brahmanas have taken shelter of administrative families that do not respect Brahminical culture? Purport. In the age of Kali, the women and the children, along with brahmanas and cows, will be grossly neglected and left unprotected. In this age, illicit connection with women will render many women and children uncared for. Circumstantially, the women will try to become independent of the protection of men, and marriage will be performed as a matter of formality agreement between man and woman. In most cases, the children will not be taken care of properly. The brahmanas are traditionally intelligent men, and thus they will be able to pick up modern education to the topmost rank. But as far as moral and religious principles are concerned, they shall be the most fallen. Education and bad character go ill together, but such things will run parallel. The administrative heads as a class will condemn the tenets of Vedic wisdom and will prefer to conduct a so-called secular society, and the so-called educated brahmanas will be purchased by such unscrupulous administrators. Even a philosopher and writer of many books on religious principles may also accept an exalted post in the government which denies all the moral codes of the sastras. The brahmanas are specifically restricted from accepting such service. But in this age they will not only accept service, but they will do so even if it is of the meanest quality. These are some of the symptoms of the Kali age, which are harmful to the general welfare of human society.
And I think this will be the last one. So this is text 22. The so-called administrators are now bewildered by the influence of this age of Kali, and thus they have put all state affairs into disorder. Are you now lamenting this disorder? Now the general populace does not follow the rules and regulations for eating, sleeping, drinking, mating, etc., and they are inclined to perform such anywhere and everywhere. Are you happy because of this? Purport. There are some necessities of life on a par with those of the lower animals, and they are eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating. These bodily demands are for both the human beings and the animals, but the human being has to fulfill such desires, not like animals, but like a human being. A dog can mate with a bitch before the public eyes without hesitation, but if a human being does so, the act will be considered a public nuisance, and the person will be criminally prosecuted. Therefore, for the human being, there are some rules and regulations, even for fulfilling common demands. The human society avoids such rules and regulations when it is bewildered by the influence of the age of Kali. In this age, people are indulging in such necessities of life without following the rules and regulations. And this deterioration of social and moral rules is certainly lamentable because of the harmful effects of such beastly behavior. In this age, the fathers and the guardians are not happy with the behavior of their wards. They should know that so many innocent children are victims of bad association, are warded by the influence of this age of Kali. We know from Srimad Bhagavatam that Ajamil, an innocent son of a Brahmin, was walking down a road and saw a Shudra pair sexually embracing. This attracted the boy, and later on the boy became a victim of all debaucheries. From a pure Brahmin, he fell down to the position of a wretched urchin, and it was all due to bad association. There was but one victim like Ajamil in those days, but in this age of Kali, the poor innocent students are daily victims of cinemas which attract men only for sex indulgence. The so-called administrators are all untrained in the affairs of the Kshatriya. The Kshatriyas are meant for administration, as the Brahmanas are meant for knowledge and guidance. The word Kshatrabandhu refers to the so-called administrators or persons promoted to the post of the administrator without proper training by culture and tradition. Nowadays, they are promoted to such exalted posts by the votes of the people who are themselves fallen in the rules and regulations of life. How can such people select a proper man when they are themselves fallen in the standard of life? Therefore, by the influence of the age of Kali, everywhere, politically, socially, or religiously, everything is topsy-turvy, and therefore, for the sane man, it is all regrettable. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Not holding back there in that section, I tell you, letting it rip. And the demigods are letting it rip out here, so we're going to say goodbye now. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Mantra
Krishna.
Srimad Bhagavatam.